In today's video we're fitting this Remus valved sports exhaust with titanium and carbon tips to this Cooper S. First we have to remove the two chassis braces that go across the exhaust tunnel. Even with a 300 Nm impact on the max setting, these 18mm bolts took absolutely ages to get out, but we got there in the end. Thankfully the front one was a lot easier, and it's just 6 T45 screws, and it comes off without any trouble. Next we sprayed some WD-40 on the clamp holding the front section of the exhaust on, and then loosened it off with a ratchet. After placing some stands under the exhaust to stop it dropping too far, we can get on with spraying silicone lubricant on the exhaust hangers at the rear of the car, and then prising them off. There's one in the middle just behind the back box, and then one on the passenger side of the back box near the rear wheel. Surprisingly, these weren't too hard to remove, just by sticking a screwdriver through the hole and prising them over the sticky outy bit on the end of the hanger. With the rear two hangers removed and the exhaust lowered down, all that's left to do is wiggle it off the downpipe. There you go. One standard exhaust removed. And one key. Then the factory exhaust can be pulled out from under the car to make way for the shiny new Remus. But before the new Remus exhaust can go on, we have to sort the wiring for the valve. The rear heat shield has to be unbolted and removed, along with the black plastic tub next to it, and this is to give us access to the rubber bung that would usually be used to drain any standing water out of the boot if you had a leak, because that's where we're going to route the wiring that controls the exhaust valve. With the bung exposed, we can pop it out and cut a little hole in it to pass the wiring through. The eyelet on the end of the black wire can be removed first, as we won't be connecting this to a battery terminal or a bolt on the chassis. The bulk of the wiring is tucked away behind the trim, secured with the included cable ties to stop it from unravelling, and then the wire is fed down towards the bottom where the bung is. So we've just put all the wiring in there and run the wire that goes to the valve through this corner behind the trim. Anywhere else, like down here, and it doesn't really fit. But there's a massive gap down here that it happily drops through. You just have to pull this trim clip out, give you a bit more room to pull the plug through, but we got there in the end. So Courtney is now going to refit the rubber bung. Now we'll plug in the controller in. Now the 12-volt port in the boot can be prised out, using a plug and a screwdriver to help get it unclipped, and then the power cables for the valve controller can be passed through the hole. The valve controller comes with these quick splice connectors, which simply wrap around the wire you want to take power from. You then slot the wire from the valve controller into the other hole, and press the metal blade into both wires with a pair of pliers. On the Mini we want to splice the brown wire from the cigarette lighter with the black wire from the valve controller, and the red and blue wire from the cigarette lighter is spliced with the red wire from the valve controller. The finished product looks pretty tidy and the joins are all strong, so the interior can go back together, and so can the heat shield and the black plastic tub underneath the floor. Finally, it's time to start fitting the new exhaust. Starting with the front section and just leaving everything loose for now, but propped up on the jack stands, so that we can adjust everything pretty easily later to make sure it all lines up. Before the rear section can be fitted to the car, the motor has to be bolted to the valve, and to do that we first have to remove this metal plate which protects the valve during shipping. Now the rear section is offered up to the car, slipped onto the midsection of the exhaust, and finally both hangers are pressed on. Now it's time to plug in the valve and give it a quick test after admiring the shiny new exhaust under the car. And it looks like the valve works just fine, so we got the wiring right. Better to find that out now than when the car's on the ground. With everything positioned where we want it, it's now time to tighten up the clamps that hold the exhaust together. And now for the piece de resistance, or whatever they say. Carbon titanium exhaust tips. Which look pretty epic. There we go, one on. And now the moment you've all been waiting for. Ready? Oh wow, that sounds lovely. I'm gonna press the button. Let's see if this works. Oh, that is very noticeable difference. Give it a little rev. And if I close the valves, I think that's valve shut. That's stuff from the inside of the exhaust blowing out, condensation and stuff. And there we go, that's cleared up. Awesome. No leaks as well, can't hear it anyway. Awesome. Valve is open, I think. The last thing to do before the car can be lowered back down is refit those chassis braces. Thankfully, this was way easier than getting off those two massive 18mm bolts was in the first place. And with the car back on the ground, we can take it out to get some sound clips. If you liked the video, remember to drop us a like, and maybe even subscribe if you want to see more of this car, or the Astra VXR track car that you might have seen peeking in the background. And thanks for taking the time to give us a watch. So first thing we've noticed, other than it sounding much different, is it now pops and bangs in 6th in sport. Which is ridiculous. That's a bit loud, isn't it? What was that?
That might be a bit too loud.
Yeah. You might want to press your button when you be between houses.